You're watching India Today Global. It's day 2 of the Democratic National Convention. Shashank and I will try breaking it down with you and with Rohit Sharma, who is in Chicago. And Rohit will be getting us all the details on what really happened. But let's begin with the details of what happened on day 2. There were the Obamas, Shashank. And they
Absolutely.
were on fire completely. There are a few things that happened. Day 1 was all about spelling out the ideas and what really is going to be on the agenda for the Democrats. Day 2 was mostly about Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris, the person, Kamala Harris and her laugh. They absolutely owned it, and we'll show you how. Kamala Harris, the prosecutor, Kamala Harris, the defendant of human rights, a defender of human rights, so on and so forth. So it's really focused on the person,
right,
and trying to compare her with Trump.
Absolutely. I think that the important thing is, I think it comes back to numbers and what the Democrats need to do in the weeks and months to come, which is that very fewer Americans, I think, know what Kamala Harris stands for. I think there was a good poll that was done a while back that around 60% of Americans have a sense of what Kamala Harris stands for when it comes to the polls, when it comes to elections, whereas 86% know who Donald Trump is, what his plans and strategies are, and that's something, a strong brand identity is something that you need. So I think that this constant focus on Kamala Harris is a good idea because it gives people a sense of who she is, what she stands for, what his view is, and we've been covering US politics for a while, and even I have to admit that sometimes even I'm not completely sure about who is Harris as a political figure.
Absolutely.
What does she actually believe in? And I think that that focus, the DNC and this convention, the big idea is we need to brand Kamala Harris, we need to give people a sense of who is she, what she stands for. So that's why the focus.
And the moment over here for the Democrats was not today. It was not even yesterday when the Democratic National Convention really kicked off. It was the moment when the Obamas actually called up Kamala Harris, because there was a lot of speculation. Will she get the delegates in her kitty? When will the Obamas really call her? And that was the moment that really turned things around, got the kind of funders to come in, sponsors to come in, money to come in, and support to really come in. So the Obamas are important. Let's begin with how Obama and what Obama said at the convention.
America's ready for a new chapter. America's ready for a better story. We are ready for a president, Kamala Harris. Tim is the kind of person who should be in politics. Born in a small town, served his country, taught kids, coached football, took care of his neighbors. He knows who he is, and he knows what's important. You can tell those flannel shirts he wears don't come from some political consultant. They come from his closet, and they have been through some stuff. They have been through some stuff. That's right.
Rohit, Obama absolutely on fire, but I think, to me, you know, it was not just Barack Obama, but Michelle Obama, who really, really spoke of what it means to have a woman president, that the time is now. And she also said, which is really great, where she said that, you know, does Trump really know that what he's really looking for is a black job, Rohit?
Yeah, I mean, fascinating. I think this is what, you know, these conventions are remembered for. I mean, it's one of those moments. I think we'll probably talk about it 10, 15, 20, 30 years from now. I think she did, I mean, in my opinion, I think she fired up the crowd. I mean, I think it was the loudest. I spoke to some of the delegates. You know, they were really, really charged up when she was talking. She had that, you know, I mean, we'd seen her, the famous line when she said in 2016, when they go low, we go high. And I think today, you know, I think she was again on fire. She was just perfect. I think she did exactly the job that she was supposed to do. At one point, I even felt that, you know, she did better than Obama. I mean, Obama is known as such a terrific orator. But I mean, Michelle just has that star power. And I know there were some Republicans, you know, saying that they did not want Trump to run against Michelle Obama. And I could see why. I mean, you know, she was so, she connects with voters. She connects with women voters. She connects with, your youngsters. She connects with everybody across the coalition that the Democrats have. And you could see that in that the way she delivered the speech, the way, even the way she introduced her husband, it's that she has that star power. And I personally think, and I could be wrong here. I mean, we've got Bill Clinton coming out tomorrow, and he would be the one who would, sort of try to do the same exact thing tomorrow. But I think if the Democrats could have done, they should have probably, sort of had waited on this for at least another day, or could have given Michelle Obama a chance to talk on Wednesday. I think tomorrow, the mood can change again. So they should have kept the best for the last, but apparently did not. So we'll see.
All right, Shashank?
No, I think that it's an interesting thing to think about in terms of, what the Kamala Harris is supposed to do with this Democratic National Convention. Actually, I'd like to ask Rohit an interesting question in terms of how he thinks this convention, how Donald Trump will be looking at this convention. We've been talking about in recent days and weeks that actually they've been unable to land attacks on Kamala Harris. They've been unable to really make their narrative a stick when it comes to Kamala Harris. Could you tell us a little bit, Rohit, about how you're seeing that, how the Republicans have tried to respond to Kamala Harris and this idea of her really having this star power behind her with the Obamas, with the Democratic Party uniting behind her?
I think if you'd seen some of the things that have come out from the Republican camp, especially, if you see J.D. Vance and things they said about, economy, I think they're trying to drive that message across the nation. They've also talked about, they're trying to distance themselves from Project 2025. I mean, today's day was dedicated to presenting a new vision for America. That was the theme of the day today. One of the reasons was because Project 2025 isn't pulling well. But I think at the end of the day, it's still dead heat. I keep talking to a lot of voters over here, and they say, yeah, they would vote for Kamala Harris. But this is Chicago.
But yes, you're in Chicago, Rohit.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So people need to go to Wisconsin. I mean, Wisconsin, I should remind everybody, Vice President Kamala Harris was in Wisconsin. She wasn't at the DNC today. She was campaigning there. Why? Because Joe Biden only won that state by 21,000 votes. Oh. So this is very close. It may not seem like it right now. I mean, it's the DNC, 4 days of, airwaves dominated by everybody, Democrats, everybody talking about them. But at the end of the day, the real challenge begins in September, the debate that we talk about. And it's by far, I think this is going to be very, very close. It could even end up being 268 versus 270 for all we know. So yeah, a lot to wait and watch.
Okay, let's just go across to what Michelle Obama had to say about hope, and then I'll come to you, gentlemen, to talk a little about Michelle Obama before, it's an aside, but we need to talk about Michelle Obama. She is the big elephant in the room when it comes to presidential prospects. Maybe not this time around, but the future. So let's just listen into what she had to say.
Kamala Harris and I built our lives on those same foundational values. Even though our mothers grew up an ocean apart, they shared the same belief in the promise of this country. That's why her mother moved here from India at 19. It's why she taught Kamala about justice, about the obligation to lift others up, about our responsibility to give more than we take. She'd often tell her daughter, don't sit around and complain about things, do something. The embodiment of the stories we tell ourselves about this country. Her story is your story. It's my story. It's the story of the vast majority of Americans trying to build a better life. Look, Kamala knows, like we do, that regardless of where you come from, what you look like, who you love, how you worship, or what's in your bank account, we all deserve the opportunity to build a decent life.
And that's Michelle Obama for you, Shashank. I mean, we've seen Trump, we've seen Kamala Harris speak, but the Obamas, when they talk, their oratory skills. It's not just about that. It's about also what Michelle Obama really stands for. So this time around, not really, but do you really see her play an important role in politics? She's already said no to
elected office,
president's office. Yes. But
I think that
can you ever say never to?
You can never say never, but I think that she has sort of made clear that that she isn't someone who's very interested in holding elected office. But I think that playing the kind of role that she did today, in terms of getting the Democratic Party's base fired up, in terms of throwing their support behind candidates that they believe can win, the Obamas, I think that's the elder statesman role, as it were. I'm sure Rohit can comment on that in a little bit as well. But the role of playing the role of an elder statesman or a stateswoman in this regard is something that I think Michelle Obama will feel much more comfortable with in terms of getting to push candidates that she thinks.
Elder would only mean by experience.
Exactly. But I think that this conversation never dies, right, about Michelle Obama, and I think partly it's borne out by, again, just to go back to numbers and polls and the fact that I remember just after the Biden-Trump debates, they did a series of polls and they said that, look, while Biden will lose to Biden and pretty much every other national Democrat will lose to Trump, the only one who beats him is Michelle Obama, and by a 10-point margin. Yes. So that's what the polls were saying. I think it was an Ipsos poll back in the day. So these conversations about Michelle Obama as a major political player, someone who could come out and hold elected office, comes from her popularity in the public. But I feel like what plays to her strengths and what the role she feels most comfortable with is what she did tonight, which is fire up a base, really throw her weight behind a candidate she believes in, and uniting to beat Donald Trump, which is not such a bad thing.
Okay, but Rohit, is there a strategy here? Is there a strategy in place that this is only a single term and it is no longer a walkover for Trump, which means it's going to be a very tough fight and Kamala Harris could become the next president? And should that be the case and Michelle Obama comes next, Democrats will have 3 terms rather than Michelle Obama having fought this time around and only confined to 2 terms.
Well, that's a lot of speculation.
It is.
Honestly, to be very honest with you, I think, judging from how she delivered the speech, and I'll probably say this, I always used to be very skeptical about, whenever somebody used to ask me about her, I was like, no, there's no way she's doing this. She's not going to run. But I think judging by her performance tonight, I think there is some spark somewhere, and I think a lot of voters across the nation would probably have seen that today or tonight. And you never know. I mean, if Trump wins, 4 years from now, we might well see, Michelle at the top of the ticket. We do not know that. But I think one thing that we also have to keep in mind is, 4 years is a long time. There are a lot of young candidates within the Democratic Party. You've got the governor of California, who looks presidential. I mean, he talks presidential. You've got our own Indian American Ro Khanna, who's been, toying with the idea of running. I mean, so there are other people too. And then when you get to a primary, it doesn't matter who you are and what kind of, name you have. It always is a challenge. So, I mean, again, would she want to go through that process? Would she want to go through that grind? I'm not sure about that yet. But I think she definitely has that edge above, at least as of now. And I should also say this, and probably will. 20 years ago, in 2004, when Obama was running as a senator in the DNC in Boston, that was his breakout speech. It kind of reminded me of that tonight when I saw Michelle Obama speak. It reminded me of that, this person has something X. There is some X factor in this person. So we might as well see her running one day. Do not know if it's 4 years from now. But does she really want to go through that grind? I think that's the biggest question every candidate has when they decide to run for office, especially the highest office in this nation.
Okay, but this day 2 again was a moment where we saw all the big voices of the Democratic Party really come out and speak. We've had Bernie Sanders himself come out, and the strong statements that he made on healthcare, on reaching out to the poor, reaching out to the ones who need not just jobs, employment, but also healthcare, and not be ashamed of the fact that you should be a government, a system that should cater to the ones who really need you, rather than the 1% of the rich who have taken the country for granted. We'll listen into Bernie Sanders, but let's first listen into Stephanie Grisham. She took on Trump directly, so let's listen into her.
just a Trump supporter. I was a true believer. I was one of his closest advisors. The Trump family became my family. I spent Easter, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's all at Mar-a-Lago. I saw him when the cameras were off. Behind closed doors, Trump mocks his supporters. He calls them basement dwellers. On a hospital visit one time when people were dying in the ICU, he was mad that the cameras were not watching him. He has no empathy, no morals, and no fidelity to the truth. He used to tell me, "It doesn't matter what you say, Stephanie. Say it enough and people will believe you." But it does matter. What you says matter, and what you don't say matters. On January 6th, I asked Melania if we could at least tweet that while peaceful protest is the right of every American, there's no place for lawlessness or violence. She replied with one word: no. I became the first senior staffer to resign that day. I couldn't be part of the insanity any longer. When I was press secretary, I got skewered for never holding a White House briefing. It's because, unlike my boss, I never wanted to stand at that podium and lie. Now here I am, behind a podium, advocating for a Democrat. And that's because I love my country more than my party. Kamala Harris tells the truth. She respects the American people, and she has my vote. Thank you.
Listen to what Bernie Sanders also had to say.
Bernie Sanders.
Thank you. It is an honor to be with you tonight because we're laying the groundwork for Kamala Harris to become our next president. Thank you, President Biden. We must summon the courage to stand up to wealth and power and deliver justice for people at home and abroad. Abroad, we must end this horrific war in Gaza. Bring home the hostages and demand an immediate ceasefire. I want you all to remember where we were 3.5 years ago. We were in the midst of the worst public health crisis in 100 years and the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression. And within 2 months of taking office, our government did.
Right, that was Bernie Sanders again specifying, clearly putting out what he thinks the Democratic Party should do. Rohit, we do know that there is a lot when it comes to coming together of the Democratic Party and standing and rallying behind Kamala Harris. But do you also see dichotomy here? Do you also see contradictions within the party in how they're really going to deal with most of the challenges, particularly economy?
Well, look, I mean, when you speak with Democrats, they always talk about how it's a big tent and they accommodate everybody with different ideologies. I mean, they could have, somebody could agree on free healthcare and somebody, that probably doesn't want to talk about it. So I think there definitely is that. I mean, that comes with the reality of having a bipartisan system, which is what America has. But I think, and I was just reminded when I was, just watching this, one of the factors that the party became ultra progressive after Bernie, came onto the scene. Free healthcare, free education, and all that stuff in 2016. And I think he's definitely given that life to a lot of progressives within the Democratic Party, and they still carry it. I mean, we've seen the squad, which is basically, become what it has become after, Bernie's movement. The other aspect of it is, once you're running a general election, you have to take positions on the center. You have to become that figure, who's more on the center, not on the left, not on the right. And I think that's exactly what Kamala Harris is trying to do. She's distanced herself from some of the things that she said in 2019, 2020 campaign. She's trying to align herself more towards the center so she can appeal to independent voters. And we'll probably see some of that, going forward. Now, does that translate into, if she becomes the president, does that translate into her following through, some of the promises that she makes on the campaign trail? Nobody knows for sure. But again, I think it is I guess a disadvantage of only having a two-party system, and both parties have it. I mean, for the longest time, we would hear about, why is the GOP divided between MAGA Republicans and, the old GOP conservative politicians, for example, Mitt Romney. And there is no space for Mitt Romney in this party anymore. So I think, one way or the other, I think both parties go through this metamorphosis over, few years, or I probably say a few decades. I will probably see that going forward as well.
But Shashank, do you think the Democrats are making it rather easy for the Trump camp to see exactly what the strengths of the Democrats are, and they're sticking to that, so the Republicans now can have a counter? I say this is because if you see the last 2 days, they focused on only their strengths.
Right.
They have not addressed immigration. They have not addressed border.
Right.
They certainly have not even touched upon foreign policy and the challenges.
And Israel and Gaza especially.
Israel and Gaza. There's a ceasefire call from Kamala, and there's an absolute clear statement from Trump on his position on Israel and ceasefire.
Right.
And they're absolutely opposite. But they're carrying it. They're carrying this because they see strength in that. And the Democrats are right now only trying to pin everything down to Trump's faults on the political violence,
Right.
on abortion laws, on reproductive rights, equality, discrimination, so on and so forth, but nothing really focusing on these other areas.
Right.
Which certainly now is looking like, are they the weak points that now the Trump camp will be using against the Democrats?
Well, I think that, we've been covering this for a while. I think that the Trump campaign has tried to go after Kamala Harris on, as you were mentioning, the economy, on immigration, for example. That's been a major line of attack for the government, especially because Kamala Harris was in some ways involved with the Biden administration's response. Just for our viewers, you might have heard that there have been millions of border crossings from America's southern border from Central American countries, and that has become a major immigration crisis. So there's been a lot of attacks by the Trump campaign against Kamala Harris for that. So I think that I think the Democrats, you are right, I think that they have, especially when you look at Israel, Gaza, I think Bernie Sanders and perhaps Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez were the only two major leaders who actually really dwelled on it for a little period of time, because it is an issue that splits the Democratic Party. But I think the Democrats have really made that decision that, look, we are going to unite behind our leader and make sure that because of the circumstances in which Harris became the nominee, she had to move extremely quickly, unite the party very quickly around her, and to defeat Trump. So you're right, they have focused completely on Trump. But that's, I think, their strength. What you're seeing right now is they have chosen, because they've had very little time, to unite completely behind the leader, to focus only on winning points, and to focus on Donald Trump, because that's, for them, they're saying that, look, this is what you get if we lose. You may not be particularly enthused about Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, but actually, this is what you get if the Democrats lose this election. So I think that for the Democrats, it's actually a fairly smart strategy. The problem is when
also in American elections, they do focus a lot on domestic. The rest will be taken care of.
Absolutely.
If people there know what they want and they get it from the respective parties.
I sort of feel like when the rubber hits the road and let's say Kamala Harris wins the election, I think then you're going to see troubles in terms of, okay, we were all together on this bandwagon, the Democratic Party, all behind Kamala Harris, but if you win elections, then who gets the jobs? What do you do about Israel? I think that's Biden was able to manage it much more reasonably. You've seen much less friction between the progressive wings. Maybe Rohit will be able to add some color to this.
Wayne?
I do. Before we move on, Geeta, I do have to make a point, and I've been wanting to do this.
Yes, please.
Bernie Sanders is 1 year, elder to President Biden, and look at his energy. And I think the reason I'm saying that is because
Love
Joe
the
Biden
guy.
yesterday said, and Joe Biden yesterday said, people, age more when they're president of the United States. And like, when I was watching Bernie Sanders today, I was like, wow, I mean, age probably has nothing to do with it. Maybe there was something wrong all along and we never knew it. So yeah, that's all. Just wanted to make that point.
Okay, but then again, on the strategy, you have 2 more days to go. You'd be covering it. Will the other issues like foreign policy challenges, the wars, the conflicts, the global economy, that does impact America and vice versa, and immigration, border issues, would that really figure? Or these are certainly the weak points that they would not want to touch upon right now? But that also gives the Republicans space to say, well, you see what they really focused on, and this is what their challenge is going to be to prepare themselves well for the next presidential debate, which is not going to be on Fox for sure.
Yeah, definitely not on Fox. I think they will have to, right? I mean, these are issues that the election is getting fought on, so they definitely will have to talk about immigration. We'll definitely have to talk about both the wars in Ukraine as well as in Gaza. Blinken has been, trying his best to somehow deliver the news that there is a ceasefire. He hasn't been really successful, but I think his task was cut out last week when they sent him over in the Middle East to get it done. So I think they definitely will have to talk about it. One thing that both Obamas mentioned today was about the fact that, actually not both, I think Barack Obama mentioned was that there was a bipartisan deal that the Democrats offered on immigration, which actually, and which he was right in saying that Trump did not want to take, and he asked Republicans not to take that deal. So, I mean, there are some, I guess, arguments to be made on Democrat side too, that, hey, we wanted to fix the border, but your guy did not want to fix it, and your guy being Trump. So we'll probably see some of that as well. But there is no escaping from these issues, Geeta. I think they will have to talk about it. They will have to address it. They will have to present their plans. And that's how you win the independent voters.
Okay, so let's get on with the last but a very important segment that has to do with family. We saw the second gentleman, Douglas Emhoff, come and speak about Kamala Harris. A very personalized speech at that, spoke about the person that she is. Rohit spoke about the mother that she is. For all those people who said, look at the statements that came from Vance, from Trump.
Childless cat lady and so on and so forth.
All of that, Shashank. The fact that you don't have to be a biological mother to be a mother. She has mothered. And that she's going to care for not just her own, but also for all the others. So, lovely speech there by Douglas. But a very important and pertinent point that he made about the one area where she's made fun of by the Republicans, which is her laugh. She laughs the way she does, and they have absolutely owned it. Listen in to what Douglas Emhoff had to say.
Generations, people have debated when to call the person you're being set up with. And never in history has anyone suggested 8:30 a.m. And yet, that's when I dialed. I got Kamala's voicemail and I just started rambling. Hey, it's Doug. I'm on my way to an early meeting. Again, it's Doug. I remember I was trying to grab the words out of the air and just put them back in my mouth. And for what seemed like far too many minutes, I hung up. By the way, Kamala saved that voicemail. And she makes me listen to it on every anniversary. But that message wasn't the only unusual thing about that day. Now, Kamala, who normally would have been working hard at her office, just happened to be waiting at her apartment for a contractor to do some work on her kitchen. I was eating at my desk, which was not a regular occurrence for a busy lawyer like me who appreciated a good business lunch. But that's when she called me back. And we talked for an hour, and we laughed. Well, you know that laugh. I love that laugh.
Well, that's Douglas Emhoff for you, the second gentleman, and Shashank, clearly. they have owned that laugh. We ourselves had somebody who joined us, an impersonator. You can go watch her. It's quite fun, but also that this is the Republican line, calling her laugh a cackle,
Right.
witch's cackle, so on and so forth. You can do all of that, but that's who she is. She carries it off, and they have completely owned it.
Right. I feel like to use the Gen Z, some Gen Z lingo, the vibes of a particular candidate, right, is something that has been a matter of debate in this election, and I feel like the Democrats have just landed their attacks much better on Trump. This idea of calling Trump and Vance weird has really
Yes,
for some reason,
resonated.
yeah, sometimes there's no rhyme or logic to it, but it spread across, like it caught hold, it found traction. In the same way that the Kamala Harris cackle has not really. I feel like those attacks have fallen flat. Fair enough, like politicians.
Because they were sexist.
Right, well, some politicians have like
More than
weird,
anything else.
I think they're weird ticks sometimes. Politicians have weird things going on for them and so on. There's that famous clip. I mean, I hate to go to British politics, but something that effectively decided an election campaign was once a opposition leader, Ed Miliband, was eating a sandwich weirdly, and that picture went live. People said this guy is too weird for us to vote for. So you have moments like that, and I think Kamala Harris, of course, her laugh is a weird tick. But I feel like just more broadly zooming out and saying that when it comes to vibes and sort of pitching candidates, I feel the Democrats have landed their attacks much better than I don't think that this laugh thing has really landed or found much traction with ordinary voters the way that Kamala Harris has managed to land her attacks on Trump and Vance, calling them weird and just
but any which way they eat their sandwiches, the Miliband brothers are brilliant. Rohit,
Yes.
coming to you, the fact that they've not just owned this, they have owned the space of narratives. At this point in time, it does seem like the Trump camp is a little lost on how to really land an attack on Kamala Harris. Would you agree?
Well, I think the other issue, not issue, the other aspect here, Geeta, is this is the convention fever. We always see this, as I was talking about earlier. Like when Trump was and he had his convention, it was all about Trump, and he's going to win. I think we're seeing the exact same thing over here right now when it's Kamala's convention. But look, yes, Trump is failing to land attacks. He hasn't been able to give her a nickname. He hasn't been able to categorize her, and he is struggling with that. I mean, that's something that comes with Trump. I mean, that's his domain. He defines people, be it little Marco or low energy Jeb Bush. So I think at the end of the day, he will find something, and I think he might find something around
Crooked Joe.
or during the debate. Crooked Joe, yeah, or I think he might find something during the debate. You never know. But again, it's he's not worried about people in Virginia or in Maryland. I think he's still trying to make sure that his message is getting to places where he can flip those, like Georgia and Arizona, right? I mean, those states. And I think he's doing pretty well over there. So it's not done by any means. I think it's just a matter of time. We'll see how polls do. She'll get a bump again. She'll probably start, leading him nationally. We've seen this in 2016. We saw how that played out. But I think even Kamala knows at this point in time, she has to get everybody out to vote for her to win this election. Otherwise, Trump's winning the White House.
Okay, but then again, when it comes to Kamala Harris, there is one very specific criticism which we spoke of, Rohit, yesterday as well, and it has to do with the fact that this doesn't cut it. That she goes and holds speeches doesn't really cut it. She has to start giving access to press. That is something that has not begun yet. What can we expect in day 3 and day 4 of the convention?
I think they will talk about, as we said, about the issues they haven't touched upon. We'll have Bill Clinton tomorrow night. We'll have another list of leaders from the Democratic Party. We will also see some regular Americans participating tomorrow and talk about their stories. I've heard that they might bring some immigrants also on the stage and have them tell their stories and how they were treated differently under Trump versus, how they were treated under Biden. So we'll probably see a lot of that. But I think the biggest thing is, and I was listening to, Kamala talk right now, and I feel like, I honestly feel this, Geeta. I think, she has to, you've got to be able to match everybody else in their performance in convention. And we haven't really seen her deliver that rousing speech, like not even in 2020 when she was the vice president. So she has to be able to meet that. And if she misses that mark, it's not going to bode well for her in the campaign. So a lot to watch out for the next 2 days.
Absolutely, Shashank, not known for her oratory skills.
Absolutely.
And to be standing against a Trump who doesn't really care about having whether he has the talent to really land a great speech or not, that he will use anything within his means.
Right. But, I think that what Harris will have to do is that in the coming presidential debates, she's going to have to land some punches. I think that one of the moments that I remember from the 2020 campaign was when she challenged Joe Biden on his support for a busing policy back in the day and his relations with people who were, with senators and politicians who were segregationists, basically people who believed that African Americans and effectively the white population of America should live separately and not have equal access to public services. She challenged him very publicly on that, and that was a massive blow. It was a gigantic blow that, really reeled Joe Biden's presidential campaign. So she needs to channel that energy when it comes to the presidential debates and show that she can take on Trump, show that she can take some of the jabs that are coming from Trump, which, by the way, have not been as sharp as they used to be. Right? No. So he's also slipped a little bit. So yes, she's not a great orator. She's no Obama when it comes to public speaking. It would have been a great asset.
Our counters. She does falter. Even during interviews, if you question her and if you cross-question, she does.
She's going to have to work on that. She's going to have to work on that. But really, I think the first order priority is to avoid what happened to Joe Biden, which effectively brought an end to his campaign, which was that June 28th debate with Trump that effectively brought an end to his campaign. What Harris is going to have to do is show that she can be presidential. And basically, she's not winning a matchup against Obama. She has to win a matchup against Trump. And so, on that presidential stage, no matter how good or bad she is as an orator, no matter how much she slips up, she has to get that performance right. That, for me, sitting as an observer, would be the key litmus test of whether she can do the job.
And I think that's what the Democratic camp right now is trying to do. The Harris camp is really trying to do, to work all those nitty-gritties in before the presidential debate. Gentlemen, Rohit, Shashank, thank you so much. We'll keep this conversation going through the next few days. And Rohit is going to send his dispatches from across the United States of America when it comes to the elections. Rohit, thank you so much for joining in. It's quite late in the night in Chicago. But before we wrap up this bulletin, there was a moment that we spoke of in this entire Kamala Harris presidential race that changed things for her. And that was the endorsement from the Obamas. Look at that video, and it's goodbye from us here in the New Delhi studio.
Hi.
Hey there.
Oh, hi, you're both together. Oh, it's good to hear you both.
I can't have this phone call without saying to my girl Kamala, I am proud of you. This is going to be historic.
We called to say Michelle and I couldn't be prouder to endorse you and to do everything we can to get you through this election and into the Oval Office.
Oh my goodness. Michelle, Barack, this means so much to me. I am looking forward to doing this with the two of you, Doug and I both, and getting out there, being on the road. But most of all, I just want to tell you the words you have spoken and the friendship that you have given over all these years mean more than I can express. So thank you both. It means so much. And we're going to have some fun with this too, aren't we?